Thank you for attending. Let's resume the meeting. Next is a public hearing on the issues relating to letting of markets under the Hong Kong Housing Authority and development of bazaars in public housing estates. You'll find the information on the agenda. On the 9th of December, we have already had a discussion about setting of bazaars in public housing estates. And we've just discussed about a public market under housing authority as well. And now we have two sessions of public hearing. There are 42 deputations and individuals. There is one deputation that will not attend but has submitted their submissions. This session will end at 6:45, and then that means the two sessions will last till for 6:45, and at 5:55 there is going to be a break in between the two sessions. Let me remind individuals and deputations that if you need you can use the earpiece. Channel 0 is floor 1 is Cantonese, 2 is English, and 3 is Putonghua. You each will have 3 minutes to speak. And if after hearing from you there is still time, we can ask members to ask questions and the administration to reply. What you say here and what is written in your submission will not be protected under the Legislative Powers and Privilege Ordinance. And I'd like to draw members of the public's attention to the notes to people attending public hearing or sitting in the public gallery. And if need be, you can obtain a copy from the member of staff near you. And if you have any written submission and you have not given the same to us, please write your name or the name of your deputation on the written submission and then give it to us afterwards for our reference. First, it's Miss Fu. I am not going to read out the organization's name. 3 minutes. Thank you. I'm from New People's Party from Kwun-chung. My name is Fu. As you know that as public markets have been sold to link REIT, seems that residents have been left like orphans. Link REITs have used a number of measures to try to chase away small operators. This has done nothing to revitalize the local economy. This has taken away our right to choose, and the room for operating for small operators has been stifled. If there can be holiday bazaars operated by non-profit making organizations, then residents will have more choices to have affordable goods. Grassroots will also have more choices. Say, for example, in Kwun-chung, there are 2 wet goods public markets, but they are run by link REIT, so prices are high. And there is only Yatong left recently because the other one's under renovation. So there are less choices. The location is inaccessible. Sometimes Kwun-chung residents would take transport to go to Chunwan to buy their vegetable instead of staying in Kwun-chung to pay for high prices. So shoppers suffer, and ordinary store operators suffer as well because they will face increase in rental after the renovation. This will affect their livelihood. I believe that that's the same plight faced by all shopping malls and public markets in public housing estates. We advocate diversity. In the new development areas like Kwun-chung, there should be FEHD managed wet markets, and there should be more choices outside chain supermarkets and shops run by link REIT. This will revitalize the local economy. This will also help improve the livelihood of grassroots because this will give rise to a diversified economy and enhance the reallocation of wealth. An across-the-board increase in rent by Lingrit is not the solution. This will not improve utilization rate of stores. As a result, every store will have to raise the prices of their goods. In relation to public markets, there should be comprehensive consultation and assessment to find out the merit and demerit of different modes of operation. There should be improvement of management as well as the environmental hygiene of public markets. People should be able to buy their household products at affordable prices. Next, Mr. Law. Good afternoon. I'm from the Civic Party. Under the Housing Authority, there are 22 public markets. 6 of them have been outsourced. Since the reunification, new public markets are all outsourced to contractors. There are many problems related to this outsourcing. There is insufficient supervision and monitoring. Say, for example, Hong Fuk Market. There is this single market operator. They propose to end the tenancy prematurely. However, in the next round of tendering, they won the bid again. This shows that there is not enough clear terms in the tenancy agreement. That's why the same operator could quit the previous tenancy agreement only to sign another one again to make more money from store operators. There is another company, which ended up with a premature termination of agreement, and another company entered the market. They asked for over 30% of rental increase, rendering small shop operators unable to operate. There is no monitoring at all on the part of the Housing Authority. There are many organizations who have lodged complaints about these problems, but they have not been properly dealt with. The Civic Party thinks that the market should be opened for smaller operators, and there should be bazaars for small operators to operate, for grassroots to have a chance to make a living. The Housing Authority replied to our inquiries, saying that when it comes to bazaars, there needs to be consent from all landowners, and there should not be any passage obstruction. But we see a lot of mobile facilities, say mobile banks, charging for their service in public housing estates. However, the Housing Authority charge for the provision of these services by these operators through various means. So it shows that it is feasible. We ask for open space in public housing estates to be open for operators to set up bazaars to revitalize local economy. Next, Ms. Wu Shui-san. I'm the chairman of the Labour Party. I think the speaking time will have to be reset. You have 3 minutes, Ms. Wu. Good afternoon. I'm the chairman of the Labour Party. My name is Wu. In relation to development of bazaars in the PRH estates, we support it. We do think that public open space is precious resources. So we focus on whether it serves its purpose as developing the community and also for the interest of the public. It should not be used as just outlets for chain stores. It should be used to enable residents to develop a self-reliance. It should also help women in the community to find job, especially those who have someone to care for and they can't work in a different district. So I do think that public open space, when they are used for bazaars, it should be a bottom-up approach for residents in the community to organize themselves, plan in accordance to their needs and decide the types of goods they need in the bazaar. Participants should also be local residents. This will be a genuine way for residents to make a living. Non-profit making organizations can act as coordinators, say for example, taking up on consultation, so that the whole community will work together, using their own space to improve their own living. Another area we are very concerned with is the location. More often than not, when a location is selected, it's done only after very lengthy consultation, wasting a lot of time of residents and organizations. The housing authority should make a list of suitable locations and consult residents regularly in relation to frequency of bazaars and their locations. This will save the effort and time of participating residents and organizations. Residents will take the initiative to plan what type of goods will be sold in the bazaar, and the housing authority will deal with the administration, consultation, and also supply of electricity. This is a division of labor. And in this way, local economy can be promoted. Sorry, time's up. Next is Miss Fong. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fong. I am a district councillor living in a public housing estate. Well, that itself is a problem. A lot of residents will have to travel to a different district to buy their daily supplies, and there is monopoly by Link-Rit. Some of the stores are used as storage, and at the same time, public markets run by the housing authority suffer losses. Residents suffer. Things can only get worse. We hear a lot about the problems of management with Link-Rit. Sometimes grassroots public markets have been turned into luxurious shopping malls. Howtech Estate, Leon Estate, Link-Rit increase the rents, and small operators will have to close down. And sometimes there is also part of the public markets or areas being sold off to conglomerates. Residents will have to travel to a different district to shop. I've just been to Sha Tin Sun Tin White Estate. The shopping mall and public market have been sold off by the Link-Rit. The environment is appalling. I do think that the housing authority should address problems when they appear as a result of Link-Rit arrangement. We do need bazaars. At the end of these contracts of outsourced public markets, the housing authority should take them back, and they should set up a steering committee with local participation of store owners to improve the operation of public markets. I'm sure no one knows better about what a bazaar or public markets need than residents. With Ma On Shan, we have 200,000 people, Cheung Kwan No 400,000 people, but there are no proper bazaars or public markets. The administration can give us a list of possible locations and set out information about one-stop application procedure, because a lot of organizations meet a lot of stumbling blocks because they have to apply for different licenses. District council face tremendous pressure. The administration should be people-oriented and keep an open mind.
The food cards have not been done properly, so it's time you coordinate the policy on bazaars. Mr. Chang Yin. Thank you. The housing department has always said they embrace a bottom-up approach. But the housing department or other departments have never come up with a solid bazaar policy. In the last meeting, they talked about a district consultation mechanism and that they would collect the views of residents from housing estates and through the EMAX, and with their approval and the support of district councils, the housing department would help process the applications. But from the papers of the last meeting, the housing department has not been very consistent, so I have some questions for them. And at the last bazaar subcommittee meeting, the housing department said that bazaars would not be against the land lease. However, in the HA's paper, they said the HD must first consult the lands department to see if there are any contraventions of land leases, and the lands department's approval is required for the bazaars or temporary bazaars if they are against land leases, which terms would be breached. These are not regular facilities, so there should not be any contraventions of land leases. So do you still need to consult the lands department, or would this step be omissible? The housing department claimed that they support the organization of bazaars, but some organizers often run into trouble, and the housing department does not know how to deal with the applications, and no guidelines are provided. As other deputations have said, the housing department has not actively helped the applicants, and it takes a lot of work to consult residents and EMAX. Would the housing department list out all the available sites for application? The housing department claimed that they have received district support. So apart from the advisory committees and residents, would there be any other mechanism to collect the views of residents, for example, by organizing meetings with residents? Would the incumbent district councillors be consulted? And if opposition is met, how would the HD proceed? Mr. Huyawai, I'm from the DAB. All along, the DAB supports the setting up of bazaars at suitable sites. We feel that bazaars can allow the public to run their businesses in an affordable manner, and they can also help promote community economy, and bazaars can also offer extra options for the public outside of shopping malls, and they can even become attractions. The setting up of bazaars at areas in which malls and markets are dominated by the link, this is a form of opposition, and at areas like Tin Shui Wai, it's an effective check against the domination of the link. We understand that the selling of wet goods and cooked food might lead to environmental concerns, and there might be obstruction of public passage, nuisance to residents, or unlicensed hawkers, etc. We need to deal with all these issues, and we need to obtain the support of residents and stakeholders. So when setting up bazaars, areas like venue, mode of operation, and so on should be based on a district-led approach. When setting up bazaars, you should obtain support from the district stakeholders for bigger bazaars. Or if you have multiple bazaars in the same district, you must consult the relevant district council as well as residents. For bazaars set up in specific estates, and you should solicit the support of EMAX or mutual aid committees for the relevant departments such as the housing department. They can provide one-stop services for bazaar organizers and streamline the application procedures. This way, applications can be processed within a reasonable timeline, and the applicant does not need to go to different departments. Thank you very much. Dr. Chao Song-ming, thank you. I follow the subcommittee meetings as well. A lot of members of different backgrounds all requested the HD or the HA to gain back control of their markets. I think this is a rather conservative approach. To me, the solution is simple. The housing department staff should retire prematurely. I think the real solution is to reduce the power of the HD. Markets should be managed directly by residents instead of by officials who do not know how to manage bazaars, or we should not resort to bureaucracy. As we all know, 10 years or so ago when the link REIT was listed, according to Cap 4 of the housing ordinance, the housing authority should provide suitable facilities to residents. Over the past decade or so, this has not been accomplished. In other words, the housing ordinance has not been enforced. So this might trigger more litigations and judicial reviews. And apparently, the housing department has dodged the issue. In other words, whether the judgment or requirements related to the listing of the link REIT have been accomplished. The housing department is afraid of bazaars, and they have set multiple requirements. This has nothing to do with the DMCs. They are trying to divert the attention. The real problem is about the unfair treaty signed with the link or the link REITs. The terms were not transparent. And how much power does the link REIT actually have, and can they supersede the housing authority or our housing policy? And they are disrespecting public interests. So do these agreements have overriding interests? So the housing department is trying to shift the focus to the link REIT. But how are you actually enforcing your housing policy or housing ordinance? You are just dodging responsibility. Thank you. Ms. Wang Wai-yin. I'm from the Hong Kong Coalition of Social Service. We have shared a paper with members. We are happy to have the chance to speak out because the public has a lot of questions, and the HKCSS feels that more bazaars can generate more opportunities for the community and improve the livelihoods of the grassroots. So a lot of venues are actually ideal for the residents, so the discussions today are very important. As we mentioned in our paper, the THB and housing department are both supportive of bazaars, but during the actual application, applicants face a lot of hiccups. Even frontline staff of the housing department do not understand the application procedures, and there have been a lot of misunderstandings. From February to June, the HKCSS held 9 bazaars with multiple units, including in Kwun-chung and Wong Tai Sin. At the end, these bazaars could not facilitate cash transactions, and we were forced to use vouchers in these bazaars, and these bazaars were hugely popular with the residents, and they look forward to more. but the applications face a number of challenges. Let me cite some of them. We were rejected by district offices or the EMACs. They did not allow cash transactions, so we do not understand whether bazaars can be held in public or PRH estates. As for the application flow, for relevant stakeholders, including organizers, SWD staff, etc., they do not know what is needed because there's no unified form, and it takes a lot of letters. We are applying for a bazaar at Sham Shui Po, but the applications are very complicated. We need the approval of estate offices and district councils. So how long does it actually take? And these have led to failures in applications in the past. We have some suggestions. First of all, can the estate management offices provide clear guidelines and application procedures? And if the support of DCs is required, can the procedures be streamlined as well? Ms. Siu-kin, as a frontline social worker, I hope that the government can clarify the bazaar policy. According to a paper, if we are to establish a bazaar in a public housing estate, we have to consider several factors. For example, the land leases, as well as the views of stakeholders and residents. If we run a referendum or consultation, if we are able to secure majority support, does it mean we are given a green light? This is a big question mark because no one can give us a definite answer. If the answer is no, would the government provide clear guidelines for NGOs and other frontline bodies on how they can run bazaars? On different occasions, the government said they are open towards bazaars, but in reality, there are different considerations, but no answer or guidelines are given. That's why the development of bazaars has stopped, and they sound very contradictory. A lot of NGOs and professionals are interested in developing bazaars, and there have been different discussions. So can you offer more convenience for NGOs to run and take part in bazaars? Thank you. Next, Mr. Li Wai-chung. Thank you. I'm a frontline social worker. From the moving in of the estate to the first bazaar, how long did it take? 6 months. When? So what was the first store which opened? It was a 24-hour it was a 12-hour convenience store, and the reason was that there weren't enough customers. The store did not cash enough business, so they would not open around the clock, and a lot of residents are they are stalled, and subsequently a laundry shop and tutorial school opened. With the residents unable to buy groceries, the residents were forced to think about how they could help themselves, and bazaars were one solution. At Siu-kin Market, our father committed suicide due to financial difficulties, and last week a single mother said that she did not want to take out loans or rely on the government, but she could not secure $500 to pay for the fees of her kid. And we have people who have talents, but they are all relying on the government. A lot of them just want to make an extra $1,000 or $2,000 per month. If the government can run bazaars so that these people can make some small monies, would that actually be possible? And the housing department simply needs to specify that there would be a bazaar at a specific housing bazaar, then people wouldn't receive complaints from tenants. The residents can actually try to sell off cheap goods at bazaars rather than throwing them away. And there are specific time slots at new PRH estates, and the HD simply needs to say that there would be bazaars at this estate, and they would receive a lot less complaints. So for new PRH estates in the future, can you pilot test the bazaars? Can you have a 1-year pilot? So apart from bazaars, what other ways can the government help these people who want to be self-reliant? Thank you. Next, Ms. Ching Yan. I'm from the Grassroots Bazaar Alliance. Through bazaar activities, we hope that the grassroots can make more money and achieve upward mobility. That's why we want to promote a bazaar policy. And bazaars organized by the HD have developed very slowly. And I have a few questions for the housing department. First of all, if a bazaar is to be held, they would be considered charitable activities. How much rent is actually charged? Can you tell us the exact rent? If rent is charged on the NGOs, where would the money end up? Can organizers charge rents on the tenants? For businesses or cash transactions, we want to know the exact criteria and objectives of the rents. Some deputations or some NGOs said we might need to consult the lands department if we want to run bazaars. Can the housing department actually take up the consultation? That way we can understand the details and how the deeds or DMCs work. And if ownership is concerned, the owners, etc. It's impossible for the NGOs to tackle all these. So hopefully the housing department can advise us on this in black and white. Can there be a uniform or unified process in order to clarify the matters for applicants and for bazaars that take cash? For your future 78 PRH estates, you should specify that there would be bazaars. We hope that cash transactions would be possible at these estates. Mr. Kwok-chung Man, thank you. Thank you. At the end of the 1980s, and the bazaars have been stigmatized, and people have suffered. And the single operator system is flawed, but the HD continues to embrace the system. So is the HD trying to dodge its responsibility by correcting its mistakes? The single operator mechanism is not a given. The HA can actually, or HD can actually outsource the tenants. If they don't have the tenants, they should hire more people. They just need to apply to LESCO. I'm sure LESCO would not stand in the way. For newer PRH estates, we have a lot of them coming, and reforms are imminent. For bazaars, the new estates are not bounded by DMCs, and they should be the priority. It depends on the positioning of these malls. If they are made profitable, then they would be just like the Link, and they are not even thinking about bazaars.
We can have temporary stalls and a market outside, and when you extend it, it's a bazaar. If it's successful, they can serve the estate, and they can also support the community. For example, Area 56 of Dongchong, you can support Dongchong New Town. Area 39 can support Yatdong So if they can become if you want a bigger shopping mall, you have to wait 10 plus years. So given the urgency, in the future, the housing department should use shopping malls and bazaars. Regarding old estates, the obstacle is from the DMC. The DMC conditions or documents, they should disclose that information, and the Gaifeng, they believe that it's not profitable, and it would be handed back to the housing department for management. So if it's profitable, you have to negotiate with the link REIT. Is that true or false? We have to refer to the DMC. So do you think the officials will answer that? Well, regarding old estates, how do we operate bazaars? Well, we should not forget that we had a lot of GIC malls that served the public. That ends my speech. Next, Ms. Siu-kin. I have a couple of questions for the housing department. So when there are community activities, the housing department will issue letters stating the different conditions for the organizing committee. In some estates, some charitable organizations, they apply for the venues for bazaars, and the whole event did not have cash transaction. There were no transactions, but frontline staff said that there were the wording of a market was in the activity, and they asked the activity name to be changed. And I gave you this example because the housing department says that as long as the bazaar organizer is a charity organization and the event organizer, as long as they don't involve in profit making, they can be considered as non-commercial activities. But in our example given just now, even though there was no cash transaction, the frontline staff are still afraid that because of the word market will involve commercial operations, and that indicates that the frontline staff, they don't have clear guidelines. And I'd like the senior management of HD to issue guidelines to frontline staff. That is, the government has a policy allowing for bazaar activities. And second, the FEHD, they are responsible for accepting applications for bazaars, and we saw that in a recent example, the HD submitted the application to district council and the EMAC for discussion. In the district council recordings, we heard that the whole discussion did not involve a vote. The district council chairman also said that it was just a consultation, and subsequently the event was organized successfully. So when the officials say that it receives community support, does that mean that they receive EMAC and district council support? Then the bazaar can be held. It doesn't. And third point, we see that the HD submitted a list. There are 78 estates that do not involve other ownership. So I'd like to ask the HD, can you disclose the other estates that have ownership? Is it link REIT, or is it units that are already sold? And could you have a negotiation with link REIT where estates that have link REIT ownership, where they are willing to open up for bazaars such as Tinyu Bazaar? Next, Mr. Lei Xiu-fu. So whether we are talking about SOM or bazaars, ultimately there should be a logic. That is, we want cheap rent or even no rent, then things will definitely be cheap. But I want you to think about an issue. Just now, a lot of people said if we have bazaars, we should have NGOs, charities, and we also want bartering and different restrictions. But what about markets? Because their rents are cheaper, or you have suppressed rent, can we also request profits to be controlled? Can prices be controlled? We see a slope, a regulatory regime being established. So let's say I can control profits and prices. So if we have, can you ensure that it is the most needy people who will patronize these stalls? We have people working long hours. How can they purchase? We have to limit even the consumers. I see a lot of people say, can we have HD issue more guidelines and more regulation? I can tell you honestly, HD, if they issue more guidelines, it will be more difficult for your business. Some of you might be stall operators. You know that the HD has a lot of guidelines. So at this point, we see a lot of ridiculous areas, and the source is that you think that cheap, low rents equals to low prices. I want you to think about public policy. If you want to help people, what's the principle? You need to help the low-income bracket. So you need to consider if you think we should adopt a piecemeal approach, well, I'll tell you that is ridiculous. People, if you say people can't afford commodities, and you want to you were saying that we need to suppress rent, that is the wrong approach. We need to think about food coupons. Of course, the question is, where does the money come from? So I would suggest that the HA or other markets, so we set up a fund where we take it from the public and spend it on the public. Next, we have Mr. Zhao Jimeng. I'm a member of Market Monitor, and there are 2 points I'd like to ask the officials, and I'd like them to respond. First, regarding the SOM transparency. Just now, the HD had said that the tenders need to have experience. They have to have experience in operating a market, and the department also disclosed that they have a hybrid calculation. They have a 50-50 ratio, but this ratio is not important. The officials have not clearly stated and told the public the assessment criteria and what the ratios are. I gave you some examples. The officials might have said that our stakeholder relationships harmonious. This is something they will consider. But this factor, how much weight does it constitute? And if you look at the Hongfuk market, just now we had talked about it. Hongfuk market, the SOM operated, had an ineffective operation. They withdrew from the operations, and then they resubmitted a tender and were able to operate the market again. So that indicates that the grading system or the regulatory regime cannot assess the tenderer, and you don't have any measures to bar them from terminating a contract early and prevent them from resubmitting a tender for the same market. Second point, in the SOM register, we only have 9 SOMs. If you look at the HD responses, the SOMs need to have experience, and what is the criteria of experience? We'll have a lot of new markets, but we'll only have these 9 tenderers who can submit tenders. If we only have 9 tenderers, if they have poor management and if there are no competitors, then we have these tenders who have poor management. Will that lead to a vicious cycle? So I'd like to urge the government to provide the criteria for assessing these SOM tenders, and we need to scrap the SOM, and the HD should manage the markets themselves. I am Tan Sok-K from Market Monitor. Just now we heard that SOM has been effective. Now, even though there have been different measures and there have been different responses to our requests, but the measures, have they been effective, and does it reflect the actual situation? We don't think so. Just now, different legislators and people have talked about Qinglong Hongfuk. This indicates that some SOMs they have poor operation, and they terminate the contract early. And how do the stall operators, how can they recover their deposits? For example, in Qinglong market, the stall operators, because the outsource operator had terminated the contract early, they had sought HD assistance, but then HD said it was a commercial dispute and they couldn't intervene. So now the stall operators, they have to issue their own legal warnings to this SOM. But this SOM is still on the register and is the operator of Tinyan market. So we really question the HD's role in supervision. And what is their assessment criteria? We'd like the government to respond in writing as soon as possible. And second, we feel that estate markets are tenant necessity. We also need so aside from providing housing, we also need to look after their daily needs. We think that it should be managed by the HD. We don't want to see poor management and poor rent control. So we think that estate markets, could you provide a certain percentage for the low-income groups so they can start their own business? We'd like to have an extra opportunity for the grassroots to move up socially. Next, Ms. Magalam. Just now, Mr. Lee, but he's not here now. I'm not sure if I understood him correctly. He thought that bazaars are not specific and not helpful, but I don't think so. I think bazaars, aside from helping the poor, it can provide more choice. We don't have to patronize Link REIT. We can have more opportunities. It's also a leisure activity, and we can utilize government land more efficiently. It's provides some economic stimulus, and we can show the young people that there are some opportunities. So I feel in public estates, using some public areas for bazaars should be encouraged, and there are a lot of benefits. In the past, we've had a lot of workshop performances, carnivals, and we all know that it's about social harmony, community, but bazaars have similar functions. It can also add cohesiveness. The Gaifong can do some shopping. It's good for the community. And we have a lot of foot traffic in public estates. According to 2016 statistics, the public estates have 2.14 million residents, 30% of the Hong Kong population. So it has a lot of foot traffic, and we'd like to see bazaars in public estates, and public estates can benefit and achieve the benefits I mentioned. Public estate land, their rents are reasonable, they have a large area, it's suitable for bazaars, and this can help us create more diverse industries and give us a more vibrant society. So I want to ask, you hear that a lot of organizations say it's hard to apply, but we now see that we don't have clear application guidelines or even application forms. So do you have any application forms for our reference? Where do we get these forms? If you don't have these forms, when will you disclose a clear set of application flowchart? Next, Mr. Liang Xiulong, and the last speaker, Mr. Lai Wai-tong. I am a representative of, we are representative of a women's group. Housewives are responsible for a daily shopping. The government says that outsourcing is effective, and we've seen that this so-called effective practice, well, we have a outsourced market in Tinyan market, and when it was managed by the housing department, all the rent problems, you could have a negotiation with the HD, but when it was outsourced, there were no room for discussion, and it led to a lot of rent problems, and rents were expensive, and the goods were expensive, so housewives would have to go to Yunlong, very far away, to do their shopping. So what do they mean by effective? Does that mean the government can shirk its responsibility and say that it's the responsibility of the outsourced SOM? So we want the HD to manage its own markets, and could you release some land for bazaars? We need an extra choice at close to their homes. I also want to talk about management. We see a lot of vacant markets. It's because of the top-down management. The government officials are in their offices in Admiralty, but the different markets have different needs. Each district has different expectations. So do the officials understand the frontline needs? So in dealing with frontline issues, we need to meet with the local businessmen. Kaifeng do have views, but there's no channel for their voices to be heard. So we need to establish a market watch monitor, such as EMAX, stall representatives, or even district councillors should meet with the housing department officials. So it should not be just a lip service. They should have actual authority and provide input. They could also have some policy input that could resolve the market problems. Next, Mr. Lai Wai-tong. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, a lot of speakers talked about providing suitable and adequate shopping facilities. But unfortunately, we see in new estates, they don't have sufficient shopping facilities. In Zhangguanou, in the last few years, there have been new estates, Xinming Estate, Yiming Estate. There are 3 shops. There's a 7-Eleven.
And the 759 store, and also a salon, but in Ximing Estate there is only one 7-Eleven. I don't understand why newly built PRH units will not cater for these facilities. And the existing market has been sold off to Link REIT. And because of various renovation works or further sale of parts of the facilities by Link REIT, there has been a frequent change of management. As a result, rental in the public market is really high. And there is also one, Gateway. There is no Chinese name. It's the most expensive public market in Kwun-chung, even the most pricey in central Kowloon. This is a mess. The government has the duty to solve it. At the moment, we see a lot of hawkers operating there. Has the housing department considered about regulating these hawkers? What about marking the site for hawkers? Charge them a low rent. You have the duty to provide shopping area for residents. I would like to hear from the housing authority about this. And for prospective operators, please provide a list so that they will know the possible locations of bazaars. And I do think that it's the duty of the housing authority to deal with that. And near where I live, I see someone who's been selling rice dumplings. And I asked, why do you come here to do this every day? And the seller said, I have great difficulties. Some of my children suffer from mental illness. I don't want to get Social Security, so I would sell what I make. And I think the government should do something about it. Now there is some time for government officials to reply before I open the floors for members to ask questions. Please be concise because I believe that members have a lot of questions to ask too. Deputy Director, thank you, and I thank deputations and individuals for expressing their views. In relation to issues that are close to the heart of deputations and individuals, I would like to reply to them first. The scope of the purview is actually under the Secretary for Food and Health. The Secretary on a number of occasions said that the bottom-up approach of bazaars has been taken into consideration, and the Secretary said that this should be led by the community. On a number of occasions, the Secretary said that without affecting food safety, public health, without obstructing public passageway, if the proponent can identify a suitable location and garner the support of the district and district councils, the administration would be happy to help by, say, for example, assisting with the application for licenses and dealing with the site. So it's not like what some deputations have said that the proponent will have to deal with all the applications themselves. Coming back to the issue, the role of the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority is one of the departments that manage these sites. We have always abided by the government's policy on bazaars. We keep an open mind when it comes to setting of bazaars in public housing estates. When organizations or some bodies have identified a suitable site and they have come up with a proposal, on top of that, they have garnered support from the community and district council, we will consider the proposal's feasibility. We would also assist the proponent to consult stakeholders to see if this project can be taken forward. But I would like to say that, public housing estates are usually quite densely populated. As a result, Ground floor space are usually open space, public passageway, or public areas. Whether certain locations is suitable for bazaars, it depends on the site use and also the situation of the public housing estates. Each estate is designed differently, and there may be difference in facilities. So it is impossible for the housing authority to prepare a list beforehand to set out possible locations for bazaars. Everything depends on the actual proposal. However, when inquiries are made, we are happy to answer them. Some people asked whether our guidelines are clearly understood by all our frontline staff. Are there any guidelines, and whether there is any flow chart? We have given the guidelines to our frontline staff. So if there are proposals, they should first go to the estate management office, and our staff will provide assistance as soon as possible. The application forms and also the flow chart are also available in our estate management offices. We will provide assistance as far as possible. But I do like to emphasize that each case is different. So we have to look into the actual details of each proposal. As a result, it will be very difficult to prepare a list beforehand. On a number of occasions, the Secretary of the Bureau has already said that it is feasible to have the actual feasible approach will be bottom up. When we have received proposals, we will provide assistance, say for example, a consultation with EMAX and other stakeholders. If there are other landowners involved and if there are DMCs or land leases, we may have to help them to get approval from the Lands Department and consent from other owners. We'll also assist proponents to apply for licenses required or permits. Some members mention about issues like cash transactions, rents. I will defer to the Assistant Director to give you information about our current policy. Please be concise because there are a number of members who would like to ask questions. I will as far as possible. The Deputy Director has already explained to you about the general principle. The applications, it's under the policy framework of the FHB. When we receive a proposal, that has been supported by local stakeholders. If the proponent is a non-profit making organization on a non-profit making basis, then we will provide concessionary rent. We'll charge concessionary rent to reflect the administrative cost. Say Tinyo Bazaar, we charge daily rates of $600 as rent. Some deputations wonder whether frontline officers are conversant with our guidelines. Well, as the Deputy Director has said that they know about the application procedure and the guidelines. If any proponents would like to put forward their proposal, they may get into contact with our estate management office. 4 members who have indicated 5, indeed, that they would like to speak. There is another session, 6 now, with Dr. Chung Chung Tai. I will only allow 3 minutes for each members because we still have another session you may ask in the next session. Mr. Andrew Wan, 3 minutes. Well, then I can only ask 1 question. In relation to bazaars, I would like to ask the Deputy Director. Previously in the housing panel, and if I remember right, in the subcommittee on bazaars, chaired by Ms. Lau Siu-lai, I asked if there can be a list. I know about some technical difficulties. Say, for example, other owners, say Lingrit, may impose restrictions. But what about the other 78 estates? You have told us about the actual situation when there is a community organization making the proposal. You take that into consideration. Oh, I think in reality, not all 70 estates will come up with a proposal. Say, for example, 30 of them. At least you can give them some information for these organizations to follow. Who knows better about possible site and what to do? So for the 78 estates, would you at least attempt to compile a list so that organizations, interested organizations, may follow it? Deputy Director, thank you for the question. Please stay closer to the microphone. I have mentioned that each estate is designed differently, providing different facilities. So if you ask us to say which estates will have suitable sites for bazaars, and it will be difficult for us. That's why we can't give you a list prepared beforehand. On the 15th of February, the Secretary's answer to a written question, yes, for the 78 list, we only provide information about estates with only one landlord, that is the housing authority. That means you don't have to go through different landowners, but it doesn't mean that these 78 estates are all suitable for bazaars. That depends on the proposal. They have to go through district council. They have to garner support from the community. These are unforeseeable. That's why I can't give you a definite answer. Next, Mr. Leung Chee-cheng, to be followed by Mr. Wilson Orr. Tin Yu Bazaar. I have observed it. There are many problems. For a bazaar to be successful, then you need you need local residents to patronize it, and there should be sufficient space. There are inherent difficulties because it's not a place for people to shop, especially on a sunny day. Will the housing department provide some assistance for the continued operation of this bazaar? This bottom-up approach proposed by some organizations, yes, indeed, it is very important because residents will know whether they need a bazaar. However, there are some residents in some estates who don't really know whether there is a need. There is a need for a bazaar. So what is the housing department's view? So there should be dual track. This currently is a single track. Some organizations don't know how to make the application. So out of these 70 estates, which ones don't have public market? Tin Chi Estates doesn't have a public market, and that's the same for some other PRH estates in Kwun-chung. Perhaps you can give us a list of more suitable sites. Of course, I know that it depends on the nature of the project, perhaps in some locations it is dangerous to have cooked food stores. But if the bazaar acts as is complementary to existing facilities, then it will be great. Well, Tin Yo Bazaar has been operating for 2 weekends. I would like to defer to Mr. Wong, the Chief Manager, to elaborate. Yes, you have 30 seconds. As well, the Tin Yo Bazaar is quite central. It's been running for 2 weekends. The only drawback is that in summer it's too sunny, and in the central stage it only accommodates about 10 stores. It's quite popular amongst residents, especially when there is a sale. Next, Mr. Wilson, all to be followed by Ms. Lau Xiaolai. I support development of bazaars in the communities. As you know, in Kwun-chung there is an Anderson development area with very limited retail facilities. I know the Christian Service has organized a bazaar there, and it was very warmly received. A group of people approached me last week to ask me whether I could help to promote it in Wong Tai Sin. Of course, I'll do that. Today there are only officials from the Housing Authority. I find that regrettable, because the policy itself involves the Food and Health Bureau and also the Lands Departments, as well as other government departments. If only the Housing Department is here, I think everything will remain on the drawing board. We need to find ways for bazaars to be run more effectively in communities. As far as Tin Yo, I know that it's been prepared over a period of 2 years, and they had to jump over hoops to get there. So, can you enhance transparency to improve the efficiency of the application procedure? You have heard these demands from stakeholders. So, is there any room for improvement? Something that is even better. Can we be more proactive to approach NGOs to organize bazaars in suitable estates? Sorry, please stop the clock now. Let me clarify. Today's topic is about the development of bazaars in public housing estates. That's why we have the Housing Department here. In relation to bazaar policy, is being followed up in another subcommittee. I now ask the Deputy Director to answer. The Housing Department will follow the overall bazaar policy of the government. And whenever we can remove barrier, to streamline procedures, to compress the time required, they are all included in the government's policy, and we will reflect these to the government. Of course, that there is always room for improvement. And I now get back to the purview of the Housing Department. And I have already outlined what kind of assistance the Housing Department may provide. Ms. Lau Xiaolai to be followed by Dr. Edward Yiu. I would like to get some clarifications first. You mentioned about getting local support. What do you mean? What's the role of the district council? Please clarify. Is it the case that if the district council does not oppose to it, then it would go ahead? And the estate management office, what criteria do they? The EMAC, what do they use? What criteria do they use to decide whether to support it or not?
When multiple NGOs apply for the same bazaar, how would you decide who to grant it to? Would there be any objective criteria to dictate which NGOs can run bazaars? Thank you very much. The bazaar policy falls under the ambit of the Food and Health Bureau. So under this framework, we are working on the policy for bazaars inside PRH estates. As for the consultation, the entire policy takes a bottom-up approach. In other words, we have to consult the districts or district councils. At PRH estates, as we have explained, we would try to render support. Whenever there are recommendations, we would go back to the estate advisory committees or the EMACs. So often we would brief the EMACs on the proposals. Usually, EMAC members would offer their views on the entire proposal, and they might also voice their concerns for district bodies if they are able to answer the questions or concerns of EMACs. Well, my question was whether you have a mechanism in place. Last time, you said you would draw lots to decide which organization or body would have the right to run a bazaar. Assistant Director. If more than one body applies for a bazaar, what will we do? Normally at housing estates, we would usually negotiate different dates for different NGOs. If negotiation fails, we would usually draw lots. And the organizer would witness the drawing of lots. So that's our normal practice. I think you covered that last time. All right, Dr. Edward, you. Thank you. I have two questions. First, can you give us a table of the rents charged for different bazaars? Can we have a tripartite meeting involving the link read? To cover the estates under the ambit of the HA and the link read, and which of them can accommodate bazaars? Thank you. Assistant Director. Perhaps I would take the second question first. We have said that there must be specific recommendations before we can carry out assessment on whether they could be practicable in a housing estate. And after that, we would conduct consultation. Without actual recommendations, it would be difficult to offer a table of housing estates in which bazaars might be possible. That's something I've stressed a lot of times. That is exactly what the bottom-up approach is all about. You need to tell us your principles. If my proposal is not going to be accepted no matter what, it would be, we wouldn't waste time. We have talked about the principles. For instance, whether residence spaces would be affected. So it might depend on time. Is it Monday to Friday or Saturday and Sunday, or would it hold bazaars once a month? The lands department came up with a 150-page table on the sites available, or else I might file a lot of applications and they are all affected. So why don't you let people know ahead of time? Can we test drive this in all estates co-owned by yourself and the link read? We have covered this in an earlier panel meeting. We need to look at a specific recommendation before we can offer our views. In other words, he didn't answer the question. So the answer is that the nature of each project is different. So we need to look at the actual contents of the proposals. The deputations have said that it's unclear, and you are telling them to just try. We do have guidelines and we do have principles, but we cannot give a table ahead of time on whether bazaars can be incorporated into specific bazaars. Dr. Cheng Jung-tai, and after that I would wrap up this session. Thank you. I completely agree with Dr. Yu Chong Yim. A bottom-up approach or flexibility do not mean there won't be any rules, and this is exactly what we saw in the audit report in April. They talked about the signature scheme projects of the district councils, and some of them have to do with the housing authority, and there would be there is certain transfer of interest. Some deputations reacted to the drawing of lots, because for bazaars, it's not that the simpler the procedures, the better. We are looking for transparency in the system. If two NGOs apply at the same time, you said you would draw lots, but there could be bid rigging even with bazaars. It's entirely possible as long as the district powers can dominate EMACs or district bodies. That's why the Audit Commission highlighted this point, because everything was muddy. So this is what we are thinking about. At Tin Yu Estate, in the site of the Ling Reed, there's a holiday bazaar which is accessible to all. By normal logic, this is unthinkable, barring extraordinary circumstances. What Dr. Edward Yu said is that we need to repeat these, we need to avoid repeating these in the future. So the HD cannot just use a bottom-up approach as an excuse. I think this is very clear. This is something I've said last time already. This would allow corruption of our government to infiltrate to the district level. I have another question. Earlier, Undersecretary for Food and Health, Professor Sophia Chen, said she would consider reissuing hawker licenses at PRH estates or bazaars. I think this is something we would think about. If the FHB has such plans, how would DHA accommodate such policy? You have 10 seconds. We have to look at the holistic policy of the government, so we would look into the issue with the FHB. If they have such plans, we would try to accommodate. Chairman, if I may, I want to clarify on the drawing of lots, we still have a second session of open hearing. So perhaps you can address that when you respond to deputations. So that's all for the first session. Let's take a 5-minute break so that deputations from the second session can come in. We'll restart after 5 minutes. Thank you.